Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Pride, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. His 4 arms clasped behind his back, he allowed himself what his species considers smile. The blue-green world looked so peaceful, so innocent, so unprepared. 3,000 years, he said to his second-in-command, Captain Smirks. 3,000 years since humanity retreated to their homeworld and declared themselves peaceful. 3,000 years of them refusing to engage in galactic politics, refusing to join the Confederacy, refusing to share their technology. Smirks's antenna twitched with anticipation. And now their time of hiding ends, Admiral. The Council has spoken. Earth's resources are needed for the war effort against the Hive. If they will not give willingly, we will take by force. The Admiral turned to face the massive view screen showing the assembled fleet. 500 warships from 12 different species hung in the void, weapons powered, shields raised. It was the largest military force assembled since the last Hive incursion, and it was all aimed at one small planet that had chosen isolation over integration. Send a message, Kethvar commanded. The communications officer, a reptilian saurian, tapped his console with scaled fingers. Channel open, Admiral. People of Earth, Kethvar began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Confederacy. Your 3,000 years of self-imposed exile, and today, the galaxy needs your resources, your technology, and your participation. You have 1 standard hour to surrender unconditionally and open your borders. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action. We have 500 ships surrounding your world. Resistance is futile. He cut the transmission with a gesture. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged glances of satisfaction. Earth had no significant military presence that their scouts had detected. A few old orbital platforms, some ancient defense satellites, nothing that could stand against even a single modern warship, let alone 500. Admiral, the scanner operator called out, her voice tinged with confusion. I'm detecting movement from Earth's surface. Military deployment? Smirks asked eagerly. No, sir. It appears to be recreational facilities, parks, entertainment complexes, what look like restaurants, they're all closing. Kethvar frowned, an expression that involved all 4 of his eyes narrowing. Closing? Yes, sir. All across the planet. And there's a message being broadcast on all human communication channels. Shall I put on screen? The Admiral nodded, curious despite himself. The view screen flickered to life, showing a human male in what appeared to be casual clothing sitting behind a desk. He looked to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. Behind him was a simple blue background with Earth's flag. Good afternoon, fellow humans, the man said calmly, as if addressing a routine matter. As you probably noticed, we have some visitors. The Galactic Confederacy has finally decided to pay us a visit after 3,000 years. They seem to think we've been hiding. He paused, a small smile playing at his lips. They think we've been afraid. The man leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. So, the Global Council has called for a Level 1 cultural response. All recreational facilities will be closed for the next, let's say 3 hours. Should be more than enough time. Please proceed to your homes in an orderly fashion. For those of you in the orbital cities, standard protocols apply. And remember, we've drilled for this. No need for panic. He looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, it felt like he was looking right at Kethvar. For our visitors watching this transmission, welcome to Earth. We've been expecting you for quite some time. 3,000 years, in fact. We do hope you'll enjoy your stay, however brief it might be. The transmission ended. What in the 7 hells was that? Smirks sputtered. Level 1 cultural response? They're closing their entertainment facilities in response to an invasion. Kethvar felt unease creep up his spine. Something was wrong. Very wrong. No species reacted to an invasion force with such casual dismissal. No species closed their recreational centers and told their citizens to go home when faced with annihilation. Unless, sir, the scanner operator's voice cracked with panic. Energy readings from Earth just spiked. Massive power signatures appearing all across the planet. In orbit, too. I've never seen anything like this. On screen, Kethvar ordered, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his stomach. The tactical display lit up with red dots. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They appeared in perfect synchronization, surrounding not just Earth, but extending throughout the entire solar system. Power readings that dwarfed anything in the Confederacy's arsenal. "Admiral," the weapons officer whispered, "those aren't just defense platforms. They're everywhere. In the asteroid belt, on their moon, the moons of Jupiter, even in the Oort cloud. How do we not detect them?" Before anyone could answer, space around Earth shimmered. What had appeared to be empty void revealed itself to be carefully crafted illusion. Massive structures materialized seemingly from nowhere. Ships that made the Dominion's pride look like a child's toy. Orbital fortresses that could house entire fleets. Defense platforms that hummed with barely contained energy. And every human who could be seen on the surface displays in the orbital cities visible through their transparent domes. On the moon bases that suddenly appeared where there had been only bare rock, they were all smiling. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer reported, his scales pale with fear. "Put it through," Kethvar managed. The screen showed a different human this time. A woman in what looked like military uniform, though was unlike any design in the Confederacy's databases. She had dark skin, short gray hair, and eyes that held a mixture of amusement and something far more dangerous. "Admiral Kethvar," she said pleasantly. "I'm General Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Command. On behalf of humanity, I'd like to thank you for finally giving us a reason to end our vacation. 3,000 years is a long time to wait, but we're patient people. Now, you mentioned something about unconditional surrender? I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, we're going to give you one chance to leave. One, take your fleet, go home, and tell the Confederacy that Earth is off limits. Forever. This is impossible," Varix breathed. "Our scouts, our intelligence, none of it showed. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see," General Chen interrupted, apparently able to hear them. "Did you really think a species that could crack FTL travel, that could build colonies across our entire system, that could create the technologies that made the Confederacy so eager to have us, did you think we spent 3,000 years doing nothing? We've been preparing, Admiral, preparing for the day when someone would be stupid enough to threaten our home." She leaned forward, her smile never wavering. "You have 5 minutes to begin your withdrawal. After that, well, let's just say we've had 3,000 years to perfect some very interesting defensive technologies. And defensive ones. And ones that don't quite fit in either category, but are absolutely fascinating in their applications." The transmission cut. Kethvar stood frozen on his bridge. Around him, his crew looked to him for orders, for guidance, for some sign of what to do next. 500 ships of the line, the pride of 12 species, the might of the Confederacy, and they were surrounded by an enemy that had hidden its true strength for 3 millennia. "Admiral," the scanner operator said quietly, "I'm detecting targeting locks. Thousands of them. We're completely outgunned." The human general's words echoed in his mind. One chance to leave. One chance to survive. But the Council's orders have been clear. Take Earth. Secure its resources. Bring humanity to heal. "Sir," Varix prompted. "Your orders?" Kethvar looked at the tactical display again. The red dots hadn't moved, hadn't fired. They were simply waiting. Waiting with the patient confidence of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. And on Earth's surface, according to the scattered reports coming in, humans were calmly heading home from their closed entertainment centers, chatting and laughing as if invasion fleets appeared in their skies every day. For minutes remaining, the Admiral's hands clenched and unclenched. 3,000 years. 3,000 years of peace, and humanity had spent every single day preparing for war. Not hiding, not cowering, preparing. And now, with the entire galaxy watching, Admiral Kethvar had to decide. Follow orders and quite possibly face the annihilation of his entire fleet, or retreat and faced the wrath of the Confederacy Council. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. On the view screen, Earth continued its slow rotation, peaceful and blue and green. But now Kethvar could see it for what it truly was. Not a hiding place, but a fortress. Not a refuge, but a trap. And he had walked right into it with 500 ships and the arrogance of assumed superiority. 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The smile on that general's face haunted him. The casual confidence. The polite tone that barely concealed the steel underneath. These weren't scared primitives or peaceful isolationists. These were apex predators who had chosen to remove themselves from the galactic food chain, not out of fear, but out of mercy. Mercy that was about to run out in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Captain Varix watched his admiral's 4 eyes dart between the tactical display and the countdown timer. 2 minutes and 50 seconds. The bridge had fallen into an unnatural silence, broken only by the soft hum of equipment and the occasional nervous shift of a crew member. "Admiral," Varix ventured, his voice barely above a whisper. The Council's orders were clear, but surely they didn't know. They didn't know because humanity wanted it that way. Kethvar cut him off. His primary arms gestured at the display. "Look at the precision, Varix. The synchronization. Every single defensive emplacement revealed itself at exactly the same moment. This isn't just military might. This is art. This is 3,000 years of turning warfare into a science so exact it borders on the divine." On the secondary screen, a feed from one of their scout ships showed something that made Varix's antenna droop in dismay. What they had thought was Mars' largest mountain was opening, revealing a cannon barrel that could swallow a frigate hull. The red planet itself was a weapon. "Sir, new energy signatures." The scanner operator's voice cracked. "Jupiter's moons, they're not moons. They're, by the 7, they're ships. Moon-sized ships." 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Down on Earth's surface, the streets were nearly empty now. The humans had retreated to their homes with an efficiency that spoke of long practice. But the few that remained seemed utterly unconcerned. One elderly human male was actually sitting on a park bench, feeding what appeared to be pigeons, directly beneath one of the Confederacy's destroyers. "How?" Varix asked no one in particular. "How they hide all this? Our best scanners, our infiltration teams, 3,000 years of observation. Because we saw what we expected to see," Admiral Kethvar said slowly, understanding dawning in his voice. "Peaceful humans, isolated humans, humans who had given up on war and retreated to their cradle. We saw weakness because that's what we wanted to see, what we needed to see to justify this." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. "Personal channel. Encrypted." Kethvar's eyes widened as he recognized the signature. Council member Drax, the ancient Void Walker who had pushed hardest for this invasion. "Put it through to my ready room," he ordered, then paused. "No, put on the main screen. Let everyone hear." Drax's writhing tentacles filled the display, his bioluminescent patches flashing in agitation. "Admiral Kethvar, why have you not begun the assault? The Council is watching. The entire Confederacy is watching. Take Earth now." "Honored Council member," Kethvar began carefully, "the situation has changed dramatically. Earth's defenses are irrelevant." Drax's voice boomed across the bridge. "You have 500 ships. They are one planet. I don't care if they have a few hidden weapons. Overwhelm them. Burn their cities. Take what we need." 1 minute and 45 seconds. "Council member," Kethvar tried again, "you don't understand. They've turned their entire system into a fortress. We're not talking about a few hidden weapons. We're talking about—" "I don't want excuses, Admiral. I want results. The hive grows stronger every cycle while humanity hoards their technology. We need their resources, their knowledge, their bodies for the war effort. Attack now, or I'll have you stripped of rank and thrown into a black hole." The transmission cut off abruptly. The bridge crew exchanged glances of disbelief. The Council, safe in their chambers light years away, had no idea what they were truly facing. 1 minute and 20 seconds. "Admiral," The communications officer spoke up hesitantly. I'm intercepting transmissions from Earth. Not military. Civilian. They're taking bets. Bets? Kethvar turned, all four eyes focusing on the officer. Yes, sir. On how long we'll last if we attack. The odds heavily favor under 30 seconds. Someone on the bridge made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. 1 minute. General Chin appeared on screen again, unbidden. 1 minute, Admiral. I hope you're making the right choice. For what it's worth, I think you're smarter than your council gives you credit for. Any species that can build a fleet like yours, that can coordinate 12 different races into a cohesive force, that can travel the stars, that species deserves better than to be thrown away on the altar of political ambition. She glanced at something off-screen. My colleagues in the physics department want me to mention that they're particularly excited to test the temporal displacement field. They've had 3,000 years to work on the theory, but field testing has been limited. Your fleet would provide excellent data on how organic matter handles localized time dilation. Some of them are betting you'd age 1,000 years in what you experience as a heartbeat. Others think you'd simply cease to exist in any meaningful way. Science is about experimentation, after all. 45 seconds. She's bluffing, Varric said, but his voice held no conviction. Temporal displacement is theoretical at best. Nobody has that technology. Nobody we know of, Kethvar corrected quietly. But then, an hour ago, we didn't know Earth had moon-sized warships disguised as Jupiter satellites. 30 seconds. The human general continued, her tone conversational. Of course, if you do decide to leave, we have a message for your council, and for the Confederacy as a whole. You see, Admiral, we didn't retreat to Earth because we were afraid of you. We retreated because we were afraid of ourselves, of what we were becoming, what we were capable of. 20 seconds. 3,000 years ago, humanity looked at what we had created, the weapons we had built, the devastation we could unleash, and we made a choice. We chose peace. We chose to step back, to go home, to tend our garden and perfect our crafts. We chose to become better than what we were. 10 seconds. But make no mistake, Admiral. We never forgot how to war. We simply chose not to. There's a difference. A difference your council is about to learn if you don't start moving in the next 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Admiral Kethvar's mind raced. 500 ships. The pride of the Confederacy. His career, his honor, his duty to the council. All balanced against the smiling faces of a species that had turned peace into preparation and isolation into innovation. 3 seconds. All ships, he began, his voice carrying across the fleet-wide channel. 2 seconds. The bridge held its breath. On Earth, that elderly human was still feeding his pigeons, unconcerned with the drama playing out in orbit above his head. 1 second. All ships, Admiral Kethvar repeated, his voice firm with decision. Begin withdrawal. Full reverse. Take us out of the system. 0. For a heartbeat that lasted an eternity, nothing happened. Then acknowledgments began flooding in from across the fleet. Some relieved, some angry, some confused, but all obeying. The massive armada that had come to conquer began to retreat, engines firing in synchronized bursts that pushed them away from Earth's embrace. Admiral, Varric exclaimed. The council will be furious, Kethvar agreed. They'll strip me of rank, condemn me as a coward, perhaps even execute me for treason. But at least there will be a council left to do so. Look at your screens, Varric. Look at what we were about to face. As if in response to his words, the human defenses began a demonstration. Not an attack, for the fleet was withdrawing as requested, but a show of force that left no doubt as to what would have happened if they had chosen differently. Mars' hidden cannon fired a beam of energy that carved a canyon into the side of Phobos, its smaller moon. The beam was precisely controlled, surgically accurate, and powerful enough to core a battleship like an apple. The moon-sized ships around Jupiter moved, just slightly, but enough to show that they were fully operational, and not the dead rocks they had pretended to be for 3 millennia. And then, in the space between Earth and its moon, reality twisted. A Confederate probe that had been accidentally left behind, aged 10,000 years in the span of a second, its metal hull corroding to dust, its power core failing, its very atoms succumbing to entropy at an accelerated rate that should have been impossible. The temporal displacement field. They hadn't been bluffing. By the 7, someone whispered. General Chen appeared on screen one final time. Thank you, Admiral. You've shown wisdom today. Please deliver this message to your council. Earth remains neutral in galactic affairs by choice. We will not share our technology for war. We will not provide resources for your conflict with the Hive. But neither will we allow anyone to threaten our peace. We have waited 3,000 years. We can wait 3,000 more. Or 30,000. Time, as you've seen, is something we've learned to manipulate. She paused, her expression softening slightly. However, if the Confederacy ever chooses the path of peace, if you ever decide that there might be a better way than endless war and forced conscription and taking what you need by force, well, our door is always open to those who come as friends rather than conquerors. We have technologies that could help your people in ways that don't involve weapons. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, art and culture and dreams made manifest. But those are gifts for friends, not tribute for conquerors. The screen went dark. As the Confederate fleet accelerated towards the system's edge, Admiral Kethvar stood at his command station and watched Earth shrink in the viewport. The blue-green jewel that had seemed so vulnerable, so ripe for conquest, now revealed as the sleeping giant it truly was. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving thousands of messages from the fleet. Ship captains wanting to know what happened, why we're retreating, what they should tell their crews. Tell them the truth, Kethvar said simply. Tell them we met a species that chose peace not from weakness but from strength. Tell them that humanity's 3,000-year vacation is over, but they're not interested in joining our wars. Tell them that we came to take from those we thought defenseless, and discovered that the most dangerous species in the galaxy are the ones who have the power to destroy you, but choose not to. He turned to face his bridge crew, seeing the mixture of relief, fear, and wonder in their expressions. And tell them that Admiral Kethvar made a choice today. Not the choice of a warrior following orders, but the choice of a sentient being who recognized when he was outmatched, outmaneuvered, and quite possibly outsmarted by a species that had 3,000 years to prepare for this moment. As they passed the orbit of Mars, every single human defense emplacement vanished from their scanners. The moon ships around Jupiter appeared once again to be simple satellites. The temporal displacement field dissipated as if it had never been. Earth's system returned to looking exactly as it had before their arrival. Peaceful, primitive, harmless. An illusion, Kethvar now knew. The greatest illusion in galactic history. And he had the dubious honor of being the one to pierce it, to see behind the mask humanity wore, and to survive the experience. Admiral, Varric said quietly, what will you tell the council? Kethvar considered the question as the stars stretched into lines around them, the FTL drive engaging to carry them away from humanity's home. I'll tell them the truth, old friend, that we lost the war today, but we never fired a shot. Exactly. The Admiral's 4 eyes held a glimmer of something that might have been respect. We lost the moment we arrived. We just didn't know it yet. Humanity won this war 3,000 years ago when they decided to prepare for it rather than prevent it. They knew someone would come eventually. Someone would see their isolation as weakness, their peace as an opportunity. So they waited, and they prepared, and they smiled. He shook his head, a gesture he had learned from studying human culture. 3,000 years of patience. 3,000 years of preparation. 3,000 years of pretending to be something they weren't. All for this moment. All to deliver one message to the galaxy. Leave us alone. As the last Confederate ship jumped to hyperspace, Earth's orbital traffic resumed its normal patterns. The parks reopened. The elderly man finished feeding his pigeons and walked home, humming an ancient tune. Children returned to their playgrounds, and Life continued as if the largest invasion fleet in Confederate history hadn't just been turned away without a single shot fired in anger. In a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, General Sarah Chun poured herself a cup of tea and settled back to watch the sunset. Her aide, a young man who had only been alive for 40 of humanity's 3,000 years of preparation, stood at attention nearby. "Stand down all defense grids," she ordered casually. "Resume standard concealment protocols. And open a channel to the Colony Council." "Yes, General." "The Council is standing by." Multiple holographic figures materialized around her office. The leaders of humanity's true civilization. The hidden cities beneath the ocean floors, the generation ships disguised as asteroids, the pocket dimensions folded into spaces between spaces, and countless other wonders hidden from prying eyes. "Well," the representative from Titan Colony asked, "how did it go?" Sarah smiled, taking a sip of her tea. "Exactly as predicted. They came with arrogance, left with wisdom, and learned the first lesson of dealing with humanity, which is," her smile widened, "that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the warrior who knows 1,000 ways to kill you. It's the one who knows 1,000,000 ways to kill you, but chooses to offer you tea instead. Today, we offer them a way out. They were smart enough to take it. And if they hadn't been," the Mars delegate asked, "then we would have given the physics department their field test, the weapons developers would have had some live target practice, and the xenobiology team would have had 500 ships worth of new specimens to study. Their choice, really." She stood, walking to the window to watch the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Send word to all hidden installations. The Confederacy knows we're armed now, but they still have no idea of our true capabilities. Let's keep it that way. After all, we've only revealed perhaps 1% of what we've built. The other 99% remains our secret." "For how long?" someone asked. "For as long as necessary. Another 3,000 years if need be. We've proven we can wait. The question is, can they?" General Chun raised her cup in a toast to the stars where the Confederate fleet was fleeing with their tales of humanity's might. To patience, to preparation, and to the power of a really good bluff backed by overwhelming firepower. May our enemies always be smart enough to run, and may we never have to show them why they should. The holograms faded one by one, leaving her alone with the sunset and the satisfaction of a job well done. 3,000 years of waiting had ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. Not with destruction, but with demonstration. Not with war, but with the promise of what war with humanity would mean. And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Kethvar was composing his report to the Council, trying to find words to explain how humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their moon-sized battleships, or their temporal displacement fields, or their planet-wide defense grids. It was their patience, their preparation, and, most terrifyingly of all, their absolute confidence that when the time came, they would be ready. The 3,000-year peace had ended, but on humanity's terms, as they had always known it would. The Galactic Confederacy Council Chamber existed in a pocket dimension, accessible from any member world but belonging to none. Its crystal walls reflected the light of 1,000 artificial stars, and at its center sat the 12 beings who commanded the military might of half the galaxy. They were not happy. Cowardice. Council member Drax's tentacles whipped through the air, his bioluminescent patches flaring angry red. 500 ships fled from one planet. Admiral Kethvar has brought shame upon us all. The Admiral followed my recommendation. A new voice interrupted. The council members turned to see Kethvar himself entering the chamber, still wearing his military uniform, but notably without his rank insignia. He had removed them himself during the journey back, knowing they would be stripped from him anyway. "You dare show your face here?" The Arthan representative, a crystalline being whose body chimed with each movement, resonated with fury. "You were given the greatest fleet in our history, and you ran like a frightened hatchling." "I preserved that fleet," Kethvar replied calmly, taking his place in the center of the chamber where accused stood for judgment. Every ship, every life, every resource you entrusted to me remains intact. Had I followed your orders, Councilmember Drax, they would all be dust orbiting Earth. Lies. Drax slammed a tentacle against his podium. Humanity is one species on one world. They could not possibly. With respect, Council Member, you weren't there. Kethvar activated his personal holoprojector. I was, and I brought proof. The chamber darkened as the recording began. The council watched in growing silence as Earth's defenses revealed themselves. The moon ships, the planetary weapons, the temporal displacement field that aged a probe to dust in seconds. The casual confidence of General Chun as she gave them one chance to leave. When it finished, the silence stretched for long moments. This is not possible, the Esikatar representative whispered, her feathers rustling in distress. Our intelligence network is the finest in the galaxy. How do we miss this? Because humanity wanted us to, Kethvar answered. They've been preparing for 3 millennia, perfecting not just weapons, but the art of deception itself. Every scout who surveyed Earth saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Every spy who infiltrated their society found exactly what humanity allowed them to find. We thought we were watching them. In truth, they were managing us. Council Member Voth, eldest of the gathered species, leaned forward on his hover platform. His ancient eyes, which had seen the rise and fall of empires, studied Kethvar intently. You spoke with their general. What did you learn? That humanity's isolation was never about fear. It was about choice. They looked at what they had become, at the weapons they had created, and chose to step back from the abyss. But they never forgot how to fight. They simply chose not to. Philosophical nonsense, Drax spat. They have technology we need for the war against the Hive. If they won't share willingly, then what? Kethvar interrupted, something he would never have dared do before today. Send 1,000 ships? 10,000? Did you not see the temporal weapon? They could age our entire fleet to dust before we fired a single shot. Did you not notice the moon ships around Jupiter? Each one the size of a small planet. And those are just the ones they chose to reveal. He gestured at the holo display. General Chun said, they showed us perhaps 1% of their capabilities. 1% was enough to send 500 ships running. What do you think the other 99% looks like? The council exchanged uneasy glances. The Hive War had drained their resources for decades. They couldn't afford to lose ships in a hopeless battle against an enemy that had turned defense into an art form. There must be a way. Council Member Zira clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps negotiation? Trade? Surely they want something. They want to be left alone, Kethvar said simply. That's all they've ever wanted. But he paused, remembering the general's words. She did say something interesting. If we choose peace, if we approach them as friends rather than conquerors, their door is open. They have medical technology, agricultural advances, cultural innovations they might share. But not weapons. Never weapons. Peace. Drax's voice dripped contempt. We are at war with the Hive. We don't have time for peace. Perhaps that's exactly why we're losing, a quiet voice said. Every head turned to the speaker. Council Member Lyra, representative of the Daman, had remained silent throughout the discussion. Her species were artists and philosophers holding a council seat more through tradition than military might. Explain, Voth commanded. Lyra stood, her gossamer wings catching the starlight. For 1,000 years, we've fought the Hive with ever greater weapons, ever larger fleets. And for 1,000 years, the war has ground on, consuming resources, lives, entire worlds. Meanwhile, humanity spent 3,000 years in isolation and developed technology that makes our greatest achievements look like children's toys. She gestured at the frozen image of General Chun. What if their path is the answer? What if the way to win the war isn't through bigger weapons, but through a different approach entirely? You suggest we abandon the war effort? The warrior prime of Ketera growled, her 4 arms crossed in displeasure. I suggest we consider why humanity's 3,000 years of peace led to greater advancement than our 1,000 years of war. Lyra's multifaceted eyes turned to each council member in turn. They said they retreated because they feared what they were becoming. Perhaps we should fear what we have already become. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some called for immediate military action against Earth despite Kethvar's warnings. Others demanded they find a way to steal humanity's technology. A few, like Lyra, suggested attempting genuine diplomacy. Through it all, Kethvar stood in the center, watching the most powerful beings in the Confederacy squabble like children. He thought of General Chen's calm confidence, of the elderly human feeding pigeons beneath an invasion fleet, of an entire species that had looked at the path of war and chosen to walk away. Enough! Voth's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Admiral Kethvar, you have faced humanity's might and lived. The Council requires your recommendation. Kethvar Streitinid. He might have lost his rank, but in this moment, he was the only being in the room who had looked into the face of humanity's hidden power and understood its implications. Leave them alone, he said simply. Declare Earth and the Sol system a neutral zone. Focus our efforts on the hive. And perhaps send diplomats instead of warriors. Real diplomats, approaching in peace, without hidden agendas or ulterior motives. And if they refuse, Drax demanded, then we continue as we are, fighting the hive with what we have. But if they accept, imagine what we might learn. Not weapons, but ways of thinking. Not technology for war, but philosophy for peace. Maybe, just maybe, they can teach us what they learned 3,000 years ago. Which is, Kethvar thought of the general's words, that the most dangerous being in the universe isn't the one who knows how to destroy, but the one who chooses not to. That true strength comes not from the ability to conquer, but from the wisdom to refrain. That sometimes the greatest victory is the battle you choose not to fight. The council fell silent again, each member lost in their own thoughts. The weight of decision hung heavy in the crystalline chamber. Finally, Voth spoke. The motion before U.S. declare the Sol system a neutral zone and attempt peaceful contact with humanity. All in favor. One by one, lights began to appear. Lyra first, her vote glowing soft blue. Then others slowly, reluctantly. Even some of the warrior species, perhaps remembering their own losses in the endless war, added their approval. In the end, it came down to a single vote. Drax writhed in place, his patches flashing through a spectrum of colors as he warred with himself. The being who had pushed hardest for invasion now held the future in his tentacles. Council member Drax? Voth prompted. This is a mistake, Drax said finally. But perhaps it is a mistake worth making. If only to learn why one species chose peace while the rest of us chose war. His light flickered on, sealing the decision. The motion passes, Voth announced. Earth is hereby declared a neutral zone. Admiral Kethvar, despite your failure to follow initial orders, the Council recognizes that your decision preserved our fleet. You will retain your rank and lead the diplomatic mission to Earth. Kethvar blinked all four eyes in surprise. Council member, I'm a military officer, not a diplomat. Which is why you're perfect for the job, Lyra interjected. You've seen their power. They know you respect it. Who better to extend our hand in friendship than the warrior who chose wisdom over orders? And so, 6 months later, Admiral Kethvar found himself once again approaching Earth. This time, his ship came alone, weapons powered down, broadcasting peace on all frequencies. No fleet surrounded him. No ultimatums preceded him. Just one being representing a confederacy that had finally chosen to try a different path. General Chen met him in person this time, in a simple conference room overlooking Earth's Pacific Ocean. She wore civilian clothes and offered him tea, which he accepted despite his species' inability to digest Earth beverages. The gesture mattered more than the consumption. I'm glad you came back, Admiral, she said, settling into her chair with easy grace. And I'm glad the Council chose wisdom. It gives me hope. Hope for what? that perhaps the galaxy is ready to learn what we learned 3,000 years ago. She gazed out at the ocean, where waves crashed endlessly against the shore. We nearly destroyed ourselves, came within minutes of ending our entire species in nuclear fire. It took staring into that abyss to make us realize there had to be a better way. And you found it in isolation? We found it in choice. She turned back to him, dark eyes serious. Every day, for 3,000 years, we chose peace. Not because we couldn't make war, but because we could. Do you understand the difference? Kethvar thought he was beginning to. You mastered yourselves before you mastered the stars. Something like that. Chin smiled. Now, shall we discuss what humanity can offer the Confederacy? I think you'll find our medical technology particularly interesting. We've had 3,000 years to perfect the art of healing rather than harming. Your species' cellular degeneration issue, for instance. We solved something similar 2 millennia ago. As they talked, Kethvar felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. For his entire life, strength had meant weapons, power had meant conquest, and peace had been nothing more than the brief pause between wars. But here sat a human, calmly discussing miraculous medical advances while moon-sized battleships hung hidden around Jupiter. Temporal weapons waited dormant in pocket dimensions, and an entire species smiled at the thought of invasion because they had transcended the need to prove their strength. Perhaps the Hive War could be won, not through bigger weapons or larger fleets, but through the radical idea that there might be a better way. Perhaps humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, but their perspective. And perhaps, just perhaps, they were willing to share it with a galaxy that had finally asked nicely. The meeting continued for hours, then days, then weeks. And slowly, carefully, humanity began to open its doors. Not all the way, never that, but enough to let in a little light. Enough to show the Confederacy that the path of peace led to places the path of war could never reach. Back on the Confederate capital, Council Member Drax received regular reports from the diplomatic mission. Each one filled him with a mixture of wonder and regret. Wonder at what humanity had achieved. Regret at what the Confederacy might have become if they had made different choices 3,000 years ago. But it wasn't too late. That was the message humanity sent with every shared innovation, every medical breakthrough, every cultural exchange. It was never too late to choose a different path. The war with the Hive continued, but now with new strategies inspired by human philosophy. Instead of meeting force with force, the Confederacy began to think around problems. Instead of bigger weapons, they developed better shields. Instead of destroying Hive worlds, they found ways to isolate them, to contain rather than conquer. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Not through military might, but through the simple recognition that there might be another way. A way that humanity had found 3,000 years ago when they looked at their weapons, looked at their wars, looked at what they were becoming, and decided to go home. Admiral Kethvar never returned to military service. He remained Earth's liaison, spending his years learning from a species that had turned patience into power and peace into an art form. He walked among humans who smiled at the memory of the day 500 warships fled their world, not with arrogance, but with relief that wisdom had prevailed over aggression. And sometimes on quiet evenings, he would sit with General Chun, now simply Sarah to him, and watch Earth's sun set over the Pacific. They would drink tea he still couldn't digest and talk about the future. A future where the galaxy might finally learn humanity's greatest secret. That true strength wasn't measured in the enemies you could destroy, but in the friends you chose to make. That the ultimate weapon wasn't one that ended lives, but one that saved them. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was put down your gun, extend your hand, and say, "Hello, friend. Would you like some tea?" The 3,000-year peace had ended not with humanity joining the galaxy's wars, but with the galaxy beginning to understand humanity's peace. And in that understanding lay the seed of something greater than any weapon, stronger than any fleet, more enduring than any empire. Hope. Hope that there could be a better way. Hope that the future didn't have to repeat the past. Hope that somewhere among the stars, a species of warriors had become gardeners, tending to peace with the same dedication they had once brought to war, and were willing to teach others to do the same. The story of humanity's 3,000-year peace would be told across the galaxy for generations to come, not as a tale of weakness or cowardice, but as proof of the greatest strength of all, the strength to have power and choose not to use it. And, in the end, that was humanity's greatest victory. Not the weapons they had built or the fleet they had turned away, but the simple, profound truth they had discovered, that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't hate or fear or aggression. It was the moment when someone chooses mercy over victory, wisdom over strength, and peace over war. And humanity had been making that choice every single day for 3,000 years. Now, finally, the galaxy was ready to learn how.